Well, the word legend is overused. And I'm not the guy that throws it around, at the drop of a hat. But
Wait a second. Who is the guy then? If you're not the guy who is the guy?
No, not usually, unless I have somebody of your caliber. I don't want to kiss your behind in the beginning because that's
I
no way
don't
to
want
start
that either, man. Please get away.
But here's the thing, folks. I have the legendary, yeah, I said it, you heard it right. The legendary Bill Boggs here with me. And he doesn't know me from Adam. See, that's the key. I like to approach people that have no idea who I am and just see if they take the bait and come on the air with me. And this wonderful man has. Bill, how are you?
Pure desperation. That's why I'm here. Good to be with you, Ralph. You have a beautiful voice. You're a handsome man. I saw your smoking hot wife in the background. And I'm happy. Actually, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm happy to be on. And let's go. Let's go, my friend.
Well, when now I don't want to throw around age because that's a bad idea. Now you have probably, I know you're okay with the age thing because I've heard you elsewhere.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe there's about 10 years between the two of us. So as I'm growing up in the New York area and I'm playing hooky from school or I'm doing something I shouldn't do in the middle of the day, what do I do each and every weekday? Way back when, what do? I turn on the great Bill Boggs on a show, Bill, Midday Live. Midday Live, it was a New York institution, was it not?
If you say so, Ralph, I'll take the encomium. Thank you very much. Well, I was on for 13 years, 90 minutes a day, live most of the time. And that was an era, that was, say, between 72 and 87. And that was an era when, before there were so many shows in the morning that were national shows, right? You just had a Today Show, Good Morning America. So I don't even think ABC had a show at that point. And so major celebrity guests and major cultural figures and major political figures and authors and whatever would do what would be called regional TV. I prefer not local TV. My show was a regional show. It was on in Connecticut, New Jersey, parts of way out Pennsylvania, the military network. But I was blessed at a time that it ended in the 80s. We had Regis and Kathy Lee and other shows started to come up, so a guest could be on a New York show and get, beyond the Today Show or whatever, a national publicity. But I have a YouTube channel called BillBoggsTV. It's free. I'll start with you. I ask you to subscribe. And I've got almost 500 videos.
I've seen it many times.
500 videos from that, from my career. I've done 15 different shows and 15 different TV shows before midday and many after midday. Most of the national work that I did was one show. I did a game show for CBS while I was doing midday. And I did 2 years of a syndicated show called Comedy Tonight. It was on 121 stations. It was taped at Channel 5. That was when we had Boggs Baker Productions. And that was the first show in the history of television that just featured stand-up comedians. I mean, go back, we had really wonderful guests on the show, many, many great guests. We booked 453 comedians in 2 years. But then after I left midday, I was on Channel 4 as an anchor for a couple of years, WNBC. But the big break that I created for myself, and I say that because no agent or anybody led me to the job. I said, I want to be on this new thing called the Food Network. I had heard about it. Reese Schoenfeld and Robin Leach were involved. I knew both of them. So I got had a lunch with Reese Schoenfeld, the head of the network, at Michael's Restaurant, one of my favorite spots in New York. And I said, you need me, and this is what I can do for you. I know a lot about food. I'm not a chef, but I really understand food culture and restaurants.
Yes.
And that led to almost 12 years on the Food Network.
And that Food Network, that stint on the Food Network, you were the pioneer.
No, I wasn't the pioneer. I did the first, the original, we had David Rosengarten, Sarah Moulton, Bobby Flay, okay. Emerald, some of the original people. But what I did, I was on with Nina Griscom hosting a show called TV Diners, which is the first show in the history of television. It was a national restaurant review show, but we didn't have enough of a budget to actually go to the restaurants outside of New York. So they actually had to like Kryvervac us the food. We'd have the food in front of us, and then we'd be reading press releases, and a crew would go out and shoot stuff in their restaurant. But it was on for a couple of years. But I was able to create the first show that was not really, it was a celebrity show. It was called Bill Boggs Corner Table. And that was a scam, a big scam. I got big name celebrities. I got to go out to lunch, eat for free, sit down with big name celebrities, get paid for it while being on television.
Not bad. Not a bad gig.
Hey, look, they paid me to have lunch with Sophia Loren. They paid me to have lunch with Fergie. They paid me to have the different people I had on that show. Was just great.
You can't get by. You can't get by when you mention somebody like Sophia Loren, who's probably about 92 or 3 right now. I still think she's hanging around. She's still with us.
Yeah, she's still alive, and there's a very good documentary on her on Prime or Netflix called What Would Sophia Loren Do?
Isn't that something? Because these documentaries are big time these days. You see them all over the place.
It's the golden age of documentaries.
It's nonstop. You know why, Bill? I found out it's cheaper.
I don't know why, so tell me.
It's cheaper to make them. My friend is in the Netflix business. He's got something in the works, a couple of things in the works for me. We'll see. When it comes to fruition, Bill, then I believe it. But right now, at this point, the documentaries, now when you say cheap, $3 million as opposed to $8 million. So there's your difference.
Yeah, there you go.
And there's so many. If you tune into all these streaming networks, you have a documentary on an anthill. You have a documentary on Franklin Roosevelt. It runs the gamut, does it not?
Yep.
Well, now, I didn't mean to put him in this now. Our friend Bill Boggs is with us, by the way, folks.
Thank you.
If you don't know that name, you've been under a rock, because my goodness, when I pointed out Midday Live, I'm remiss at mentioning so many things, but we have an hour. So that's how I first stumbled upon you, because you were right. You know how TV brings everybody home and you feel like they're part of the family. Sure. So when I was home from school, faking being sick with a fever or something, Midday Live, the gamut, the different guests that you had, ranging from movie actors to politicians to current event, haymakers of the day. Now, how did you do that with such a diverse cast there?
Well, I started out to say these people. Look, the quid pro quo in most appearances is that somebody has something to plug, whether it's a politician who just wants exposure. We had Cuomo, Ed Koch, let's see, Jimmy Carter, Ted Kennedy off the top of my head, whether it's a literary person like Gore Vidal.
Yes.
Whether it's a guy like Roy Cohn who just wanted to be on TV. And we had Roy on with Gore Vidal in a 1-hour debate between Roy Cohn and Gore Vidal. Whether it's Natalie Wood plugging a movie, or Yul Brynner plugging a Broadway show, it was an outlet for that quid pro quo. There were some guests, a lot of the guests I would know in advance. I'd known Sammy Davis since the late 60s, and he was on a few times. All of this, most of the stuff, most of the names are going to drop, right, are available on BillBoggsTV on the YouTube channel. And I say that because, Bill interviewed Yul Brynner. If you go to BillBoggsTV, you will see it there, or Natalie Wood, or Sean Connery, or Bing Crosby, or Frank Sinatra, or Sammy Davis Jr., or Jerry Lewis. Now, these are cultural figures. They're no longer alive, but I've also got interviews there with Carly Simon, Barry Manilow, some McEnroe. I love John McEnroe. A lot of people currently really still working and doing good things. And that's really going to be my legacy of my work on television, which pretty much ended in 2017.
And you started in Philly. Am I right on that? Well, you start in your living room. You start in your living room with a little microphone and interviewing family members and different people. I know that about you. Is that true?
Yeah, I don't remember doing it, but my goal in life since I was a child, it seems almost facile. It seems hard to believe this is true, but I wanted to be like the men on the radio as a little kid who were like Art Linkletter or Arthur Godfrey. These are forgotten names pretty much, who were interviewing people. I love a show called People Are Funny. So my mother tells me, I do not remember this. So I must have been like 4, 5 maybe, walking around the house with a pencil and stopping and asking questions like that. And I ended up, how blessed have I been? I ended up making that childhood dream come true.
Fantastic.
So it is really true, folks. You can manifest your life. We're lucky, most of us who live here in America, that we're in a country where you're able, if you work hard and get some breaks and you don't have a lot of evil forces against you, you can make those dreams come true.
And half, maybe 3/4 of what the guests you just mentioned, vividly, I remember these people. I remember Frank's interview with you. And that was your favorite. If you have Frank Sinatra and you're not a little bit starstruck, you're doing a good job. I'm not the type to get starstruck. I'm like you.
I noticed. Look, I noticed you're completely calm in my presence. I appreciate
well,
that.
you're bigger than Frank. You meant more to me than
Oh,
Frank
no,
did way
please.
back when. You want to know why? My mother was a big Frank fan. I got so sick of Sinatra, on and on with the albums. I said, Ma, give me a break. I'm going to watch Bill Boggs. But Frank Sinatra had to be groundbreaking for you. Just sitting next to him had to be, iconic for you, no? Or he had to be iconic, right? I'm sure.
Well, for me, it was like kind of like a dream come true, because my mother was like your mother, a big Frank fan of Bobby Soxer, and I was, as I still am, very much into rock and roll, right? 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, pretty much rock and roll. But when I was 17 years old, it was a very good year. I was working down in Ocean City, New Jersey, as a bellhop at the Lincoln Hotel. In fact, I just posted a picture I found of me as a bellhop in front of Lincoln Hotel. I posted on my Instagram account, which is Real Bill Boggs, at
Yes.
Real Bill Boggs. Anyway, so Sinatra was coming to a club called the 500 Club in Atlantic City, New Jersey, which is owned by Skinny D'Amato. There's a wonderful book written about it called The Last Great Time. And I was a college sophomore or whatever. The adults who were guests in the hotel were nuts about this. Everybody wanted to see Sinatra. It was in the front page of the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Atlantic City Press, Sinatra, blah, blah, blah. So I thought, I want to go see this. And of course, I don't have any money for reservation. I'm getting a 50-cent tip was a good tip, very good tip. So I called the 500 Club and I found out what time the shows were. And 2 of the wealthy guests in our hotel were going over to like the second night of Sinatra. And I said, while you're there, do me a favor, look around and tell me what the busboys are wearing. And this is a caper that I had dreamed up.
It's a good
So
one.
they come back, and the busboys are wearing white jackets and black bow ties and black pants. So same as the busboys at the Lincoln Hotel where I was working. So the show times are 8, 9, and 11. My friend Dave Fixler, who is in this picture I found, we drove over in my 56 Plymouth convertible and parked the car, walked down the alley behind the 500 Club. Showtime was supposed to be at 9, about 8:45, 20 minutes to 9. We walked through the kitchen and just completely unnoticed out into a crazy lobby, people waving money. Well, that must be the place. Everybody's trying to get in there. But we look like employees. We just right through the crowd. And we came into the Vermilion Room there, the 500 Club. And it was happening at about 5 of 9 that night.
I can't imagine. Tell
Last guests from, 5 of 11. We went to the 11 o'clock show. 5 of 11. The last guests from the 9 o'clock show were leaving. So we're in, completely in. We look around and there's other busboys there. So for almost a half hour, we literally pretended to work, setting up. We just never stopped. We never stopped.
That is fantastic.
No one ever questioned us. And then the lights go down and Buddy Lester, a comedian, comes out and I'd never been in a nightclub. It's the first nightclub experience, right? People are smoking, drinking, men with big cufflinks, women plunging necklines. Guys, how can anyone sing to this crowd? Sinatra comes out instantly, has the people in the palm of his hand, and does about a 50-minute set. He's doing 3, maybe an hour at the most. And I just fell in love with Frank. We were very close to I'm probably 30 feet away from the stage, standing in front of a pillar. We dropped the white jackets and put on long ties, and we just looked like two customers standing there. Once the show started, no one could get to us.
That is a great.
So
That is
from
a
that
great.
night forward, I fell in love with Frank Sinatra. And in 1975, I was in Vegas for a big night, big Saturday night, birthday party for a friend of mine. We went to Elvis Presley's first show and Sinatra's second show. I have not lived, not bragging, we did that. I have not lived a small life. I have gone for it, right? So after Frank's second show, about 2 a.m, everybody else is completely bombed, Ralph. I mean, they had been partying all afternoon.
You were the sober one. You kept your head on straight.
I
right?
was reasonably sober. But I mean, one of them had done Quaaludes, passed out. Another was doing coke. It was like crazy, wandered out on the strip. I just was walking around. I'd only been to Caesar's Palace a couple of times in my life. And I ran into Julie Rizzo, Frank Sinatra's friend, who knew me from Sammy Davis.
Mm.
And Julie said, Bill, how you doing? What are you doing here? I said, oh, we went to blah, blah. Frank, really? You want to meet Frank? Sure. He said, come over to the Galleria Lounge around 4 o'clock. So I had 45 minutes, like to walk around. Wow, it's great. I'm going to meet Frank. And I walked over, and Frank is there in his tuxedo from the show, a couple of beautiful women, important looking men. And Julie said, wait. And when Frank would pause in his conversation, Julie went in his ear who I was, and Frank looks up at me and says, Billy, hello. And we talked for about 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes. I told him about my mother. I told him about the 500 Club sneaking in, which had made the front page of the paper because, I must note, we went back to the Lincoln Hotel. No one believed us that we had snuck in to see Sinatra. We went back the next night, snuck in again, and took pictures.
2 nights
I
in a
usually
row.
don't have that part of the story, but we did.
You're
And
pushing your luck there with that
I
one.
have the pictures, of course.
Wow.
And so at the end of the conversation, Frank and I just connected. And this is a long story, but in a way, it's a love story because I really love Frank, and he saw this in me. And Ralph, I think he knew that he could trust me, and he volunteered to come and do midday. I never asked him. Never asked him. He said, it's April, Easter, right? I'm going to be in New York with Basie and Ella in September. Maybe I'll swing by and do your show. And what do you think I said, Ralph?
What was that?
Hmm?
What was that?
I'm not asking for anything, Frank. It's the truth. And he takes my hand.
What kind of look did he give you for that one?
Here's what happened.
Yeah.
He looked at me with these and he goes, I know, Billy. I know you're not asking. Maybe I'll come. And he did. So I knew how to conduct myself.
I was going to say, when you're asking Frank for a favor, there's going to be some payback down the line somewhere.
No, Bill volunteered. He volunteered.
That was volunteer. Yes, it was.
Just said, it was like I'm saying, thank you. I'm not asking. So.
Well, see, now the thing is, now there was a guy named Joe Franklin that I happen to remember. I knew him well before he passed.
Host, yeah, Joe Franklin.
Wonderful guy. Now, Joe Franklin, to me, you watch that show 2 o'clock in the morning, and you saw all the myriad of guests from the janitor to Barbra Streisand.
Well, that was when somebody didn't show up when the janitor was on.
That's just ridiculous, right?
But I'm not janitor on next week. Good idea, Joe.
But I'm not trying to compare. But the thing was, that's the thing. You had the ordinary person sometimes that was very interesting, had a story to tell. Then you had Barbra Streisand. I think maybe not Barbara. But then you had Frank Sinatra. Never had Babs. Then you had Frank Sinatra. Then you had Lucille Ball, which I remember very distinctly right here. I was a big I Love Lucy fan. Here's Lucy, the Lucy Show. And can we discuss Lucy? Then I'm going to get on to something else because it's not just about Midday Live, but I want to know about my favorites. I'm very, very. Can we go with Lucille Ball? And what did she give you? Because she was very straight-laced, I remember Lucille Ball talking to a friend of mine way back when he did a little TV show, and she didn't give him anything. What did you get out of Lucille Ball, Bill?
Well, Lucille Ball was not on Midday. I interviewed Lucille Ball on a 60mm film when she had a film junket for MAME. However, her daughter, Lucy Arnaz, was on several times, and Lucy Arnaz to this day is a very close friend of mine. In fact, we dated for a while, and her brother Desi Arnaz Jr., Lucy and Desi were on. If you go to Bill Boggs TV on YouTube, you can see a clip.
These are all there, folks. By the way,
Yeah.
you have to go to
Lucy, however, I did have dinner. This is like a name dropping retrospective here.
I know.
I did have dinner with Lucille Ball and Gary Morton and Lucy Arnaz at Chasen's one weekend when I was in LA. And prior to dinner, visited Lucy at her home, where Lucille Ball at her home, where Lucy Arnaz, my friend, had grown up. And then we went to dinner at Chasen's. That was a big Saturday night for me.
Well, but I happen to remember something with the Mame. I remember when she played Mame on Broadway. I do remember that. And well, that was something else because, again, I mentioned Bill Boggs with me for the next, I'm going to keep him as long as I can hold him hostage here. Now, how did Court TV, one of my favorites in the beginning, I think it's a little bit diluted now.
Does it still exist?
It exists in a very poor sense of the word. It's not what it used to be.
True TV now, didn't it morph in?
It may have morphed into something else, but more or less, the fans of Court TV still tune into this simulation, I guess, this rendition of Court TV, which I don't really think too highly of at this moment. But way back when, to get a camera in the courtroom and to have some commentary and to actually see it from an audience perspective, you're sitting at home and you're right there. That was very unique at the time, was it not?
Well, yes, a genius lawyer who started his business, Steve Brill, had the idea for you could at that point get some cameras in the courtroom. Some courts you couldn't, some courts you could. So Steve had the idea of doing a live 24-hour network that would feature, well, it wouldn't have been live at 3 in the morning, it would have been reruns, would feature major trials that would capture the audience's attention. Look what the OJ trial did. So I had spent 2 years. I had been on television for 18 years as a talk show host. First in North Carolina for 3 years, Southern Exposure, which, by the way, is where my books start out, the new books, in the same station and so forth. And then the time I mentioned, 13 years on Midday, and then a couple of years in Philadelphia. And I really felt I was repeating myself. I had this one moment when I was interviewing the Chippendales, and it was just like, this is like the 18th time I've interviewed the Chippendales. And I thought, I ought to do something different. And I kind of sent it out there, and one thing led to another. I ended up being executive producer of the Morton Downey Jr. show. And that was the brilliant Bob Pittman and Mayo Stunts and Brian Beadle. And I loved running the show. I love being executive producer. I love being in charge of the show. I love being in charge of the staff, and had to get rid of a couple of people, bring in better people. And Downey was like a roller coaster ride in the dark with a blindfold on. You never knew what was going to happen. But the same people, Bob Pittman and his company, partnered with Steve Brill to try to create Court TV. So they shifted me when Downey went off there over to Court TV, but it was not for me a good fit, meaning that if I had just seen, oh, there's an executive producer job open at Court TV, I wouldn't have even applied for it. While I was at Court TV, I had a significant offer from the Comedy Channel, which I should have taken, to be an executive producer at the Comedy Channel. Comedy's been my strong suit since high school, right? And out of loyalty to Brill and Court TV, I didn't take it. And then after my contract was up, Brill did not renew it, and the job went to somebody else. So that was a regret that I had, that I didn't take that job at the Comedy Network. That's my personal side of Court TV.
Yeah, and very interesting. Changing TV, I think, for the better. Maybe one of the first reality shows in the real sense of the word. What they have now, you stick a camera there, reality doesn't exist any longer when the person knows that camera is there. If you hide that camera, you may have something.
100% that's true. If you know a camera is on, Wait a second, let me get a drink here.
Sure.
If you know a camera is on you, like sitting down, say interviewing, let me take somebody, okay, Sean Connery.
Yes.
He's on to promote the movie. I'm interviewing him. We're having a conversation, but there's an element in it that we're both aware that it's a public conversation that's going on at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about that. I'm glad you realize that, because many people think that fighting and pulling each other's hair, this is reality. It certainly is not. Bill Boggs with me, and he'll hang around. I'm sure he will. The off-Broadway play, that interests me. I'm an actor. The off-Broadway play, Talk Show Confidential. I frankly, when it came out, I remember hearing it in passing. I never followed up to go see it, and I regret it. Talk about that for a minute.
Well, what happened was in 2001, when I was on the Food Network, Jacques Pepin, the great French chef, had a deal with Crystal Cruises as one of the celebrity chef for Crystal. Wait a second.
You can take a time. Want to take a time out?
No,
you can take a time out. Okay.
Anyway, he had a deal with Crystal Cruises, and he said, "Bill, you should go on Crystal Cruises. They have celebrity speakers. They would love you." So I was out in LA, and I made an appointment. And driving over to Crystal Cruises, I thought, well, I got to figure what I'd talk about. So I had these stories, true stories of crazy stuff that happened on television, like interviewing the wrong guest, and not the person I thought it was, and so forth.
Yes.
And so I said, well, I'll do a talk. I'll call it Confessions of a Talk Show Host. So the guy says, oh, that's a good idea. We'll put you on a short cruise. You might not like it. So it was 2001, probably summer. Yes, it was before the horrible attacks. So I took my son Trevor with me, who was at that point just in the 9th grade or so. And before the ship, this beautiful ship, Crystal Cruises was always one of the elite cruise line. They could have had 1,800 people on board, but they never had more than 900, no big waiting in line, and excellent entertainment. So before the ship pulled out of San Francisco Harbor, I said, geez, I want to do this the rest of my life. So I ended up creating 6 talks, which I've given all over the world on 18 or 19 different cruises, and Guildhall in East Hampton, here in New York, country clubs, FAU down in Florida, stuff like that. But the first one, Confessions of a Talk Show, went over so well. The one time I did it, I came back and I said, you know, I have it within me to do more with this. I could do an off-Broadway show. So at a party, I met a man who has a theater down on Broadway. He said, I can give you 2 weeks if you can get the show ready in 3 weeks. So I went back to my home in Philadelphia, sat at a table where I used to do my homework, got out a vat of pictures, and pretty much parsed out what became an hour and 10-minute show. They ended up adding another, became like an hour and 20-minute show, 80-minute, an 80-minute show is what it became. And then it ran there for 2 weeks. Then I thought, geez, I want to keep doing this. And my friend Peter at the beautiful Tryout Theater on 72nd Street gave me an open run. So I converted the title. I wish I hadn't changed the title. Confessions of a Talk Show may have been a better title. Talk Show Confidential didn't tell you what it was about, but I ran off Broadway for 6 years. Now, not every night, but I started out doing once a week, then once a month, and depending on what I wanted to do. But I kept it alive, and I'll be doing that show down in Florida this summer.
Oh, I mean, fantastic! So you're gonna take under wraps and do it all over again. That's fair. The Triad Theater in the '70s, that nice space. That's a nice little off-Broadway house. Is that 99-seater or something like that?
No, it's a little more than that. But it's on 72nd Street, so it's an odd location for a theater.
Yeah, it is very weird.
But I really love it. Peter Martin, who owns that theater, is an extremely creative guy.
And I used to live in that neighborhood. And a wonderful neighborhood. Who do you know that would actually live in that neighborhood and give up their apartment? Only this jerk right here on the other end, because now I'm in New Jersey. Anyway, this is the great Bill Boggs again. You know, there's that word "great" again. You can't. You
segue into what I'm doing now. We're talking about the past here.
Right.
This is all
I'm getting to it. I'm getting to it.
I'm just
But
checking. Just
but
checking.
I kind of bounce around because I have
Bounce,
no rhyme or reason with these questionings, just what comes to me. How now when you came here, this is very interesting to me. When you came here in 1975, from where, by the way? I have to ask you that. Where's your hometown?
Mentioned it before. I came from High Point, North Carolina.
High
Up
Point, North Carolina.
from Philadelphia. I began my career managing a comedy team that went on to write for Mary Tyler Moore, Bob Newhart, Muppets, and Carol Burnett. I began my career in comedy, but when I had an opportunity to be on television in Philadelphia, even though it was once a week, I was offered an opportunity to be associate producer of a show and be on once a week. So I took that, and the comedy team went, and I did that for 2 years. And then I made a dramatic decision that some people thought was really foolish.
Mm-hmm.
I was on KYW TV once a week, doing a feature report, and I was associate producer of the show that replaced Tom Snyder. It was called McLean and Company. And this was like playing for the Phillies, having like one at bat every 5 days. So I made a New Year's resolution going into the year of 1972 that I would go anywhere in America to get my own show, reasoning that your life is what you do during the day between when you wake up and when you go to sleep. Oh, wait a second. Hold on. That's really annoying that the phone would be ringing. All right. So I made a New Year's. You can edit this? I don't know.
Yeah, we won't.
I made a New Year's resolution. I go anywhere in America to get my own show, reasoning that your life is what you do the time you wake up and go to sleep. And I would rather be doing what I want to do in a small market than not doing everything I want to do in the fourth largest market. People thought I was nuts, but I moved to a medium-sized market, an ABC affiliate, WGHP TV, and had an amazingly successful run. Richard Baker, who later became my business partner, Boggs Baker, was my intern. And we put together a show based on instinct about what the viewers wanted in North Carolina, live in the morning. And we beat the Today Show for 3 straight years.
Wow.
Got syndicated in the South. And I had offered to go to Miami to do a show, go to San Francisco to do a show, and come to New York to do a show. I say come to New York because I'm in New York right now. And I took the New York opportunity that became Midday Live. And as a Philadelphian, I've always had this view of I'm a Philadelphian, you're New Yorkers. And it didn't take me long to realize the provincialness that can exist in New York City. Would you like to hear an example of it?
Yes, please, please.
Well, in North Carolina, I had a wonderful life. I could play tennis every day. I had a house with a swimming pool. I had 2 dogs. I could go jogging through the woods. I set my own schedule. I did 5 live shows a week, taped a 6th show, so that every 5 or 6 weeks I could take a week off. I set up deals. I traveled around the world. I went to Paris, Bombay, shooting film, came back with it. Very successful. Really happy. Within 2 weeks, people couldn't believe in these like provincial New Yorkers that I had a wonderful life in High Point, North Carolina.
Why not? It's a beautiful place to be.
It wasn't here.
I understand.
Yeah, no, this is really an important point. People would say, well, the one woman said, how do you like, I was at a party. She said, ooh, how do you like that someone recognized you? I said, well, it's a very interesting experience. It changes your reality. You're walking down the street and someone recognizes you, but coming to New York has been a relief because when I was in High Point, everywhere I went, right, every supermarket, everywhere, parking lot, restaurants, tennis court, Bill. I said, so she said, yeah, this is quote. She said, yeah, but that was only High Point.
That's a New Yorker for you.
I think, what the hell where are your values, lady?
I can almost hear her saying it because I met the same type. Well, that, a big fish in a little pond, that they think, but that's not the case.
I'm simply pointing out, right, as a Philadelphian who loves New York and been living in New York since 1975, that if you think this is the fucking center of the universe here, there's no place else where you can have a good life, re-examine your priorities.
Hey, they actually build they in the Upper West Side. They think, well, we're better than the Upper East Side, or we don't want to go to Tribeca. It's almost these little enclaves.
I know, I know.
How it is. It's
Anyway,
that whole New York state of mind, as somebody wrote a long time ago.
I try to be as open-minded and fair-minded about anything in life as possible. You know, when I interviewed Sinatra, you know what Sinatra said to me?
What's that?
And I remember he said, I'm a man who never generalizes, ever.
Mm.
And that's a good thing to remember. Like, you ever have a conversation with someone says, I hate Florida.
Right.
You hate an entire state with this giant coastline and all these different things, and you hate the state of Florida.
Right.
As it is, everything about it, all the people, I hate Florida.
But they all end up down there. They really do. Every New Yorker migrates each and every time. Now, I know the kind of humor with these wonderful books. We'll get to your books right now, if that's okay with you.
Okay.
What a prolific author this man is. My goodness, I'm not saying that because he's on my show. This is true. What now run them down for me in chronological order of some kind, because I want to know the whole thing here so the audience can pick up on all these.
Well, I always, when I first got in show business, Ralph, at the very beginning of my career, I was managing a comedy team. Two guys who were friends of mine who were writing these sketch routines. And when we first started having some success, like about 6 months after I started managing them, they were on the Dave Frost show and then the Merv Griffin show and then Joey Bishop. We were having early success. We were all made more money the first year doing this than we were in our corporate jobs at Armstrong Court Company. So I've always been interested in comedy. I was in a comedy team in high school. I spent 3 years with two brilliant comedy writers, Tom Patchett and Jay Tarsis. And so writing has always been part of my life since I could learn to print, right? I had a whole cartoon series I did as a child. So recent books I've written are satire, but the first book I wrote was a romantic love story, an R-rated. All my fiction has been R-rated fiction. It was called At First Sight, and it was a comedic romantic love story, but an R-rated version. Sort of like There's Something About Mary, that was an R-rated comedy, romantic comedy. And actually, many years later, the book was optioned for a movie by Renee Zellweger, but it never got made. But that's okay. Renee's fabulous, wonderful. If I had a daughter, I would like her to be like Renee. That's how much I like Renee. And then years went by, but I had this idea to write a book about success sequence of successful people. All these people I've been interviewing all these years, you can see on BillBoggsTV, mentioning, I learned something from a lot of these people, I thought, well, if I could interview just say 40 people, an eclectic group of people, about the internal qualities that made them successful, not business strategies, personal discipline and things. So that book came out, HarperCollins, called Got What It Takes, Successful People Reveal How They Made It to the Top. It's some really wonderful big name people in that book. And then that was 2007. 10 years later, when my television career pretty much ended with the last show I did for PBS called My Generation. And some of those interviews are like the Carly Simon interview, the Barry Manilow interview, the Judy Collins interview, and about 25 more are also on BillBoggsTV. I put everything there. And I keep mentioning it because if it's frustrating for people to hear me talk about Carly Simon, who's had about 500,000 views on the YouTube channel, you can go see it. Anyway, when that last show went off the air, I was standing here in my Golden Bachelor Jr., swinging Golden Bachelor Jr. apartment. And I thought, I've been chasing work my whole life. I'm in my 70s, early 70s. I'm not going to look for another TV job. I have to put aside my identification of myself as a talk show host. I mean, I am a talk show host. I've done it. It doesn't mean I couldn't do it again. It's like if a chef is no longer working as a chef, he's still a chef. That's why I don't like the term former talk show host. I am a talk show host. I'm just not doing it now. But anyway, I put it aside And I said, I'm going to write satire. I'm going back to my roots as a comedy writer. And what came out of that was this first book. It's called The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog as Told to Bill Boggs. And right there it says, politically incorrect humor. I literally stand for pushing the barriers, not worrying about getting canceled. This is not a Republican or Democratic statement. It's a comedian statement.
Right.
As Judy Gold said, when they come for the comedians, we're all in trouble. Yeah. I stand for, I sat down, I wrote a book. My goal was to make you laugh and have a good time. And I'm happy to say, without hyperbole, that the first book, The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog, got really, really good reviews. The Winston Groom, remember, who wrote Forrest Gump?
Yes,
is the last book he ever reviewed. Wait a second. The last book he ever reviewed. Winston Groom, who wrote Forrest Gump, this book's the last book he ever reviewed. He loved to review books. Bill Boggs and his friend Spike unleashed comedic wizardry in this madcap, highly entertaining satirical novel. And that's one of, I'm just telling you what people said. So it did so well. In terms of the reviews. I wrote a sequel, which I consider the greatest work of my life. This just came out this summer. It's called Spike Unleashed: The Wonder Dog Returns.
It's a great cover.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
it's a fantastic cover. Its simplicity is beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, it's a good cover. The broken leash like that. It's pop art cover. Jacob,
I love it. I love it.
You know how this happened? I had this idea for a broken leash, and I drew a rough little cover because I can draw. And Jacob Below, their book's filled with illustrations, by the way. I said, try to do this, and he sent me one. He sent me 3 samples, and what he added was that. That made it like a pop art. So this book came out in July, and it's available on Amazon. And literally, I'm telling you, it's designed to make you laugh. And my favorite review came from the New York Daily News. I thought I'd have to be hospitalized from laughing so hard.
That's a good thing.
It makes me feel so good when somebody reads the book, because I was laughing out loud. This was my goal, and I'm either going to write a 3rd Spike book, or I'm going to stop the Spike series for a while and write a story-packed memoir. I may actually put some of the codification of some of the stories of my life. So let's talk about the writing process and whatever you want to know about these books.
Please do, because writing is the essence of everything starts with an idea, and then maybe on paper. To me, I can just see you devoting time each and every day. But I'm wondering now, the type of writer that you are, did you devote a certain amount of time each and every day, or did you wait for inspiration to start?
That's a very good question. The first thing was, when I had this idea that I wanted to become a writer, and I resolved to myself, I said, I don't know, how do I block out the time? I'm busy. I've always been a busy guy. And a dear friend of mine, Isabel Burnett, said, I was having lunch with her, and she said, Bill, one day, when you have some open time, just sit down and do it and see what happens. So I sat down, and the books, by the way, are narrated by the dog. The dog has been compared to like an observational, he's been compared to both, let's see, Jerry Seinfeld, and I'll come up with the other name of the observational comedian. And so it's the voice of the dog came right through me. It was amazing. And I was so filled with the energy of the dog looking at, I'm talking about satire and looking at our culture, right, from an outsider's perspective, standpoint of a dog.
Well, the whole thing about the dog is ingenious to me. See, to me, you can get away with murder with the dog that you couldn't get away with
Bill Maher said. Bill Maher read some of the book. He said, "You don't have to worry. Blame it on the dog."
Yeah, just blame it on the dog. The dog takes the blame. But sir, you know what I'm saying. When you said before, and that really rang, it really triggered something in me. When you said you're not worrying about being canceled, this is politically incorrect, I don't give a hoot, don't give a shit, and all that. That's what you need. Biting satire has to have that. Otherwise, what good is it?
It does. Everyone has boundaries. I have boundaries and so forth. I'm not trying to offend people.
Right.
I'm trying to make people laugh. And it's in pretty much a traditional sense. Someone could say, like an old white man sense. I guess that's it. That's who I am.
That's
But
who
I
you
don't
are.
really, I don't really, because I'm getting the results that I wanted. I want to just tell you one of the things that has been fun. By the way, the book's available on Amazon.
Yeah, go get that book, folks, please.
Unleashed on Amazon. It's on sale this week for like $12. A very good gift for people.
I have to ask you a question. Do people still go to bookstores and buy these things? There's everything on Amazon.
I just tell at this point, my book came out in July. Whether it's still in bookstores, I don't know. I love bookstores, but I know you can get it on Amazon.
Amazon all the way, folks. Go ahead.
Here are some. One of the things that's been fun is in creating inventions. Here are some of the inventions in the book. The inconceivable burger, the world's first after-sex contraceptive meal. Okay. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, the sex bit. The sex bit is something that a woman wears on her wrist. It's like a Fitbit, but it's a sex bit that measures her response to the man making love to her. So the guy gets a score. How would you feel about that? Ask the BW about that.
We have to consult Cindy on that one. Go ahead.
Try that one.
That's it. Those are beautiful already because, again, no holds barred, just let it fly. And that's what it's all about. I love that because, unadulterated humor is too few and far between. I don't see much of it anymore. Did you ever go to a college campus and try this material out?
Well, Jerry Seinfeld won't play at college.
I heard that.
The other comedian, Spike, the Wonder Dog, has been compared to George Carlin.
Oh, the great Carlin.
Thank you.
Yeah, he had a lot of anarchy. He had a lot of anarchist in him, Carlin. Yeah. I can see that in you, just this slightly, a little anarchy. You need that kind of satire. I love it because I used to read a book a day. And now, of course, we get our information in so many different places. The book has become obsolete, but man, there's nothing like picking up that book, that hardcover book or whatever it is. And you just read a book. It's so beautiful and basic the way it was meant to be.
Yeah, it is. And you're concentrating on one thing at a time. Well, this book's available. Fortunately, it's a very good read, an audible version of the book. And there's an e-version of the book. And there's a regular version. Good old fashioned, I'm sitting with pages version of the book. There's one of the, it's not a comic novel, but it has illustrations in it.
And one more thing about that. Now, how did the dog come about? Why the dog and why Spike the Wonder Dog? Tell us about that.
In that show that I got in North Carolina that I was talking about, it's called Southern Exposure. Mm-hmm. And when I started writing the first book, I said the idea was this. On my show, Southern Exposure with Bill Boggs, I had an English Bull Terrier. This is what Spike is like. It's an English Bull Terrier. Like this is Spike Jr. The first person to buy 100 books gets a Spike Jr.
By the way, for the radio people, just held up a dog. That's so adorable and cute, with a little like the Little Rascals dog.
It's an English Bull Terrier, like the Target.
Okay, the Target. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's what the Spike is. So I had an English Bull Terrier named Spike, who was on my Southern Exposure show, Ralph. And Spike was so popular, he got more mail than I did. And shortly before coming to New York, the Wonder Dog was killed by a drunk driver driving a truck, ran right over
Oh, what a tragedy.
Very awful. I dug a hole and buried the dog myself.
I'm sure.
Anyway, Spike the Wonder Dog is, in fact, I just realized, buried behind a house in North Carolina. So my idea was, what if Spike hadn't died and came and became a big TV and social media star with a talk show host master like me? His owner in the book is Bud. And Bud is loosely based on me. Loosely. It's not everything he does. It's not a memoir. It's a novel. And so all my fiction has been in the first person, and this is in the first dog. So that's it. That's where the idea came from, Ralph.
From the perspective of the first dog. I love that. I love that. Bill Boggs with me. I have to ask you, here's something that comes to mind why I was drawn to you in the first place. You didn't give a hoot who you were talking to. You needled them a little bit. Forget that wonderful sense of humor. We know you have that, but you give them a little needle once in a while when they needed it. I remember in specifically, Miles Davis walks out,
Miles Davis.
just shrouded in all this very pompous. To me, this is my opinion. You don't have to agree. Very pompous. You went, I actually remember this. You went to maybe embrace him, or you got close to him, which is perfectly normal. And I would do the same thing. He was very standoffish, but by the time that interview was over, Bill, you had him in the palm of your hand. And that was your strong point.
Well, let me tell you, very few people know the actual story behind how Miles Davis ended up on not Midday Live, but on Time Out with Bill Boggs in Philadelphia after
Really?
Midday. Oh yeah, that's not Midday. I was in California Midday. I've been off Midday for a year trying to work a deal with Dick Clark in a game show. It didn't come through. I needed to make a living. I took a talk host job in Philadelphia. Time Out with Bill. I replaced Richard Bay, who had moved on. So what happened was, Ralph, I was on a break from what I was doing in Philadelphia. I was on the West Coast dating this woman out there who had a drinking problem to the extent that sometimes she would have a drink and be like Julie Andrews, oh, Hills, I'd be really happy.
Right,
Other
right.
times it would be like Hannibal Lecter, I'm gonna rip your. So I'm sitting at a restaurant on Melrose, and she's had two, what do you call them, martinis, and her voice is raised. She's starting to criticize me, my family, my hair, and I'm like pushing back, and we're just at the point where we're not going to explode, but it's going to break up the evening. When I feel this hand on my shoulder, I turn around, I see this beatific brown face with transplant dreadlocks going back. Miles Davis, Bill Boggs. How you doing, man? Let me talk to your woman. I really like her. So he's as cool as could be. Comes over, hugs her, chats us up, sits down. Order is restored. So there's no more problem. During that conversation, he invited me to a show at Lincoln Center 3 weeks later. I go to the show at Lincoln Center by myself. And I got this note, Miles, I'd like to see you backstage. I go back. There's a dressing room, doors half open. He's got trumpet is on a chair. He's got his leg up. He's eating an orange, talking to two beautiful African American women. And I walk over the door. He sees, hey, Boggs, come here. I walk over and say, come here, get over here, man, get over here. And he goes right in my ear. He says, I saved your ass in LA, didn't I?
Sounds like him.
Now,
I've never met the man, but I've observed.
You asked me about the show.
Yeah.
So that day in his dressing room, he says, man, that we really have a conversation, not the thing at the restaurant. Man, I watch you. You've been like my midday. I mean, your midday is like my morning show. I love it. I see you interviewing me. I always wanted you to interview me. What?
Wow.
What are you doing now? So I tell him I'm in Philadelphia. Oh, Philadelphia. One thing led to another. I invite him down. He came down at his own expense to be interviewed by me in Philadelphia. So the Miles Davis you see on that show wanted to be there and wanted me to interview
him.
See,
that's the thing. He walked out like it was too cool for the room, but you got him.
People read negativity into that. You've read negativity into that.
The very beginning of the interview, though, Bill. That's what I saw. I saw this guy. How did they coerce him to come out there? But that was his idea. Isn't that something?
15 minutes before the show, we're sitting around having a good time in a green room together.
I think sometimes they're shy and they don't like to admit it.
Anyway, so that whole Miles Davis interview was on BillBoggsTV. You would be
That's where I saw it.
You'd be amazed at the negative crap that people. Oh, this guy Miles must hate this guy. Oh, Miles must think he's a real jerk. I'm not kidding. When then after he says, "Man, that was great. I had a great time," and he goes back to New York.
Did you see him?
Always illusion.
Did you see him as the greatest artist the greatest jazz artist that you were aware of? Did you idolize this guy?
I'd say greatest. I loved his work. I loved his work. But he came into and I need to stop pretty soon.
Yeah. We'll call it off soon.
Speaking ahead, I want to rest for a couple minutes. I came in about the Tutu album, and he didn't. I would talk about like Quiet Nights or Sketches of Spain. This is in private conversation with him. He didn't want to. He said, "That's the past. I'm here. I'm in the future." You know. But he sort of lost me at Bitches Brew. Bitches Brew was a tough album for me.
Yeah,
to
I didn't go for that album.
a lot of people.
It got too stylized and
It
glitzy.
was very progressive funk.
It was. It was like with the direction Herbie Hancock went at one point. I didn't care for either. All right, Bill Boggs was good enough to spend almost an hour on the Ralph Romeo program, and that's a good feat because, you know, we can talk forever, but maybe we'll get a part 2 in there at one time or another. Bill, I want to, before we go, just everywhere where anyone can see you right now, what you're doing now, which is most important, what we're doing now. So what are you doing now, and what's going on, and where can they get in touch with you?
Okay, well, that's very nice. They can get in Instagram at Real Bill Boggs. Okay, Instagram at Real Bill Boggs. I'm on Facebook. Follow me on Facebook. BillBoggsTV. You can send me a message on BillBoggsTV. If I read them like every week. If you see like the Sammy Davis interview and you want to send me a message, just look at the thing and send me a message on BillBoggsTV. And then I have my YouTube channel. Excuse me. Then I have a website, BillBoggs.com, that has contact information to an agent. I don't like to give out my personal phone number. I was happy to give it to you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. But no, you have everything, folks, and go and see Bill Boggs, still very, very active with everything he's doing. And again, I don't fool around. I have the best guests. I don't just put anybody on the radio or on my YouTube channel, as a matter of fact. Bill, I really appreciate it so much. It was a joy, man. I had a ball.
I loved this interview. I was completely relaxed, felt comfortable, and you gave me enough time to really expand on stories. And I hope I didn't go on too long, but some of the stories are worth telling.